All right, so this is going to be our 3X clinic on the 3X method. We're going to talk about how we train elite pitchers. We could go into position players, we could go into hitting, but I like to stick around pitchers, what I'm pretty good at. Zinger, I want him to also collaborate with how his methods work around this and go into even more things that we don't go into, which would be some pitch stuff if we have time, like pitch development stuff. This is Coach Linsky. Played the game. I don't even go in your resume. He's played the game for a while. Obviously retired. He's a great coach now. He's a fun guy to kind of loosen everybody up, so I want him to come in and talk to you guys first.
Yeah, because really this whole clinic is about you guys learning something. Hopefully you're going to come out of this stronger up here than when you got in here. That's the main thing. But the process of learning sucks because you got to get out of your comfort zone, all right? So I think here's just a perfect example of getting out of our comfort zone and what happens when we try to learn. I think we've all learned to say the word toy boat. Say it at one time. 1, 2, 3, toy boat, right? Very simple to learn how to say that. But I've learned how to say something a little different. I learned how to say toy boat, 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 toy boat. How many times can you say it? Try it. Now you done on 3. How many you got? How you done on 3? How many you got? Ooh, got up to 7. The whole process is you kind of laugh. Oh man, I didn't learn it. But I guarantee you, if you sit there and you practice it, at the end of it, you'll start to learn it. So it's that uncomfortable feeling of trying to learn something when you're out on the field and you butcher it. The art of what we do here is make a mistake. You got to, because we'll teach you how to fix it. When you got a plan on how to fix your mistake if you throw the ball up high, then you don't panic and have, I use a lot of F words, sorry guys, when I speak, fear. You got a lot of fear on the mound when you throw the ball high if you don't know how to get it lower. So another example of fear, and Brent uses it all the time. Whip, 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 whip. The whip. When you see something like this, some of you guys have already started messing around with it. There may be a little bit of fear in your mind when you start out with this, but the reason we talk about a whip is because we talk about a kinetic chain, and you're going to hear him talk about this quite a bit in the presentation. This whip is a perfect example of a kinetic chain. What happens when this whip, if I do it right, is on a crack, the end of it moves 767 miles an hour, that's called a cracker at the end. It breaks the sound barrier and it makes a loud sound. What are you doing? You got fear? What are you doing? See that? Did you see that fear? Because I went up till we backed up. But trust me, I know how it works. Because the fear of a whip, if you look at this, see that little half circle that the whip's going around? That's called a fulcrum. Everybody say fulcrum. Fulcrum. You don't hear it. In your body, the fulcrum is your spine. These are your levers. Your levers have to move around the spine, and that's how you throw the ball. If you ever watch an ice skater, when she comes up on the ice and she jumps up and she jumps down, she pulls her, and then when she wants to come out, she throws her arms out. If you're throwing your arms out when you're pitching, you're not working efficiently. He's going to teach you how to work efficiently. But this whip itself promotes a lot of fear. You if you have fear. But listen to how the fulcrum works. If I do it real quick, it does nothing. If I come out of my set too quick, I'm not going to be efficient enough to deliver the ball. But if I go slow and controlled and then work it down, 767 miles an hour. Do we have any water here? We got any water here? Water? Water? I'm from Maryland. We got any water? What do you got here?
Nope, I just got your brother.
Oh, there we go. This water came from Yankee Stadium. This is from the fountain of Babe Ruth. I call it the baseball baptism. What we do is we wet the end of this, because anything that moves 767 miles an hour,
Yes.
when it cracks, the water's going to evaporate. But I need a volunteer. Oh, come on up, come on up, come on up. Just stand right there, right in front of me. Now, if you could you turn your hat backwards just in case? I mean, you never know. But I know how a whip works, all right?
You never know.
So he's going to have a little bit of fear here. Now, when you feel fear on the mound, what's the first thing you're supposed to do when you start feeling uptight? You breathe. It automatically relaxes you. 3-2 count, bases loaded, up by 1 run. You breathe, so start breathing so you don't get real scared. So if I do this right, you don't protect anything? You good there with it on your, there you go. I don't So if I hold it right here and I do it properly, the whip's going to crack. It's going to come down. Now, if I was to pull up, it's a different story. I'd get you. But I pull straight down, and as that fulcrum comes down, the whip actually cracks down here. It never comes close to you. On the count of 3. And the spray, let's see what happens to this after I crack it. 1, 2.
Comes up.
You feel it? Mm-hmm. And then look at this. Totally evaporated out. So it's all gone. So guys, the body works. You'll hear Brent talk about this as the body is a kinetic chain. Oh, good job, by the way. All right, I got a prize for you at the end. I don't know what it is.
He does. He already has it. He's in the camp.
Yeah.
We can give some of those away if you want.
But guys, I just want you to understand, we use a lot of analogies when we teach. I mean, there's one perfect God. Here's my Bible thump for today. There's only one perfect man that used analogies all the time. We threw him up on a cross, right? Depending on what you believe in. But analogies work very well. So understand his analogy. He can be a high-tech redneck. He can come in real high on you, and I'll throw some things down here to bring him down to earth. But listen to what he has to say. Open your ears, open your minds, and understand you don't be smarter when you leave here than when you got here. So guys, have a great clinic. That was so well.
A round of applause for Nuke.
You want to say anything? Give them a layout or anything?
I think let's rock and roll.
Okay, we're just going to go through this presentation, this give you some information, and then we can have fun and bring the King of the Hills out and do some beginner drills and stuff, and drive the plates around. A little bit on myself, how I got into this. I tore my rotator cuff at 18 years old. Anybody torn a rotator cuff before?
Good.
Not a lot of people have. It's tough. Doctors told me I would probably never play again. I was 18, so you're going into college with a serious injury. So that's why they were like, you'll probably never play again. Just trying to get your eligibility back and go through what you had to go through with rehabbing rotator cuff surgery. But that started a career. I mean, I had 2 decisions at that time. What 2 decisions do we have when we have a serious ending or career-ending injury? What do you think those 2 decisions are, or those 2 options are?
Work through it or quit.
Exactly. So that's the first time in your career where you actually start contemplating quitting something that you love. And when you're 18, that's probably not the perfect or the age ideally you thought you'd be considered quitting the game, right? So I made that decision. I took those choices and I said, no, I want to try to figure this out. I'm crazy. Okay. I'm just going to try to figure this out, right? And that's what led me on this insane path of trying to figure out what went wrong. How did I get to that place? What could I do better? Unfortunately, I felt like I was very misguided up to that point because I was very obedient. I followed what the game had told me to do, and I felt like that what the game was, or what it was telling me now, is I probably need to take a different path and learn different stuff going forward. So that evolved to everything that you're going to learn about today. I did eventually play again. Got back into college baseball, played all over. Got a chance to play independent minor league baseball. So I got my ball speed even higher. I was probably mid to upper 80s. I got low to mid 80s, or low to mid 90s. Got me into independent ball. Worked as a consultant, as a biomechanics analyst for the Rays and Dodgers, and I've had many other teams come in to learn the methods. Currently getting my master's in kinesiology, certified USA weightlifting, and got a biomechanics specialist certification. What's my mission? Is to get it's an evidence-based method that I've developed in baseball. What does that mean? Evidence-based. What do you think that means?
Based on facts and knowledge.
Some people would argue they're facts, but it's based on research, right? Looking at research as opposed to theory. Like, this is what I was told, or this is how I think it works, as opposed to, hey, let's study it. Let's look at a good sample size and let's see how it plays out. Also look at like peer-reviewed journals and study peer-reviewed journals that are coming from medical institutions that are doing really good research in most cases, you hope. So I
That data beats an opinion, right? I mean, he's got data. He's going to collect data from you guys. And that beats any opinion of the day of the week.
no, I mean, don't get me wrong. We're getting a little obsessed with that. I get that, but it is to me the better approach. But you got to have a good balance with what is actually practical and what actually is researched, right? So that was my mission. I wanted to build an evidence-based model to help guys like you not have to go through what I went through, to be able to optimize, live the dream, and not blow out in the process. So I'm the kind of guy when someone blows out, I take it personally. I feel pretty bad if I've had those guys go through that, because I know how hard that is to go through. And that's something I don't wish to anybody. Unfortunately, I feel like it's become more the status quo that, okay, it's just, Tommy John's just a part of the process. I don't think it should ever be a part of the process. So building the healthy throwing athlete, that's what we want to focus on. So we're going to come from that standpoint of how do we avoid injury? Causes of injury. Anybody want to give a shot? What do you think causes of injury? You can probably read it off of there, but anyone has their opinion on what causes of injury is? ASMI, the American Sports Medicine Institute. Anybody ever heard of them? Dr. Andrews. They have a lot of the research. It's not all the research, but a lot of the good research. They found that injuries coming from three things: overuse, poor mechanics, poor physical fitness. Raise your hand if you have one of those three, or you're experiencing one of those three. Overuse, poor mechanics, poor physical fitness. Okay, raise your hand if you're experiencing two of those things. All three. If you're honest, you just keep raising your hand, right? So yeah, this is obviously something that we're all battling with, right, through our careers. But it's a good approach. When people always come to me and they're like, my arm hurts, or I feel, I just got injured. What should I do? I typically go to these things. Okay, let's deal with overuse. Let's deal with poor mechanics. Let's deal with the poor physical fitness. It's just a good position to come from. And then we can look at today, like overuse. We've all heard this. Overuse is probably the biggest problem of all three, right? The poor physical fitness is probably accelerating the overuse, or making the overuse cause more stress, or you're basically falling into overuse more quickly. And then poor mechanics, right? That also kind of does the same thing, kind of forces you to fall into the overuse more quickly. So overuse is probably the big culprit here. And if you look at a lot of the research, which is like mind-blowing, when you look at, ASMI found that throwing more than 8 months out of the year made you 5 times more likely to have injury. If you regularly pitched with arm fatigue, 36 times more likely to have injury. If you threw greater than 80 pitches per game, 3.8 times more likely to have injury. If your fastball velocity was over 85, you were 2.5 times more likely to have injury. If you pitched more than 100 innings in at least 1 year, 3.5 times more likely to have injury. Played catcher in addition to pitching, 2.7 times more likely to have injury. Participated in showcase, almost 8 times more likely to have injury. Participated in concurrent leagues, 5 times more likely to have injury. Participated in travel ball, 4.8 times more likely to have injury. Raise your hand if you had done one of those things. Right? So it's like, unfortunately, we're all susceptible. We're all in a very touchy, challenging place because we're putting our bodies through a lot in this game.
You guys live in a warm weather state. I live in Houston. I know like Phoenix. You can play baseball year round, can't you? You guys don't have snow here, do you? When can you not play baseball in Phoenix? Never, right? So you got to take the time, maybe play another sport. Take some time away from it. Don't fall into those studies.
Yeah, build in other seasons, or build in seasons.
Training seasons.
Yeah. So how to regulate workload? We hear this thing, like a lot of the regulations are in Little League. You can't throw a pitcher more than, a certain amount of innings.
That's pitch smart.
Right.
For every pitch is
Right.
an hour of rest, pretty much. That's the way pitch smart works.
Yeah, and I think it works a little bit, but it doesn't, solve all the problems. Ryan Croton, he's a trainer with the Angels. He actually did some studies on that and didn't find there was a lot of success with regulating pitch count and stuff like that. I kind of fall on the lines. I like what Dr. Samir did. He's a doctor of physical therapy. he did some work with the Moto Sleeve and found that it's more stress management. And I think it's a good option. I think it's something, if you are concerned about overuse, something with like the Moto Sleeve, or just charting your own, how many throws you're making, not just game throws, but throwing all the time, and you're charting stress management. It's called acute to chronic workload, or ratio. So basically, if you're going to throw, say, in 2 weeks, and you need a good 2 weeks of, pitch counts, or, recording your pitches or throws to see this. But if you're going to, say, throw, for just an example, every other day you're going to throw 30 pitches, okay, 30 throws if you're a fielder. And then all of a sudden, your next outing, you're going to throw 100. If you make something that dramatic, or a jump that dramatic, more than likely that's going to set you up for injury. So it's just stress management at that point. It's like, just be smart. Know that your body can only predict the past, or what you've put it through, right? So if you put the body through this regimen of like 30 throws every other day, and then you jump up, double that, your body's going to freak out. It just wasn't ready for it. So I'd say something like 30%. Don't go up 30% in a jump. And think how that plays out, guys. That's not like what we typically do. What do we typically do when we hurt our arms? What's the first thing we do? Okay, what else do we do? What's the first thing we do after we ice it? We rest, right? We think like rest is going to cure it. Actually, sometimes it makes it worse. How could rest make it worse?
Makes it lazy.
Yeah, so what it does is it takes the stress off the tissue, which is initially you need for some healing. But what happens if we're expected in 3 more days to throw 100 pitches in a game, or play a full game or double header from shortstop? Did that rest help? More than likely, it set it up for a lot of stress to jump right back into it, right? So be careful when you actually rest, because then you go from no throws to 50, and that's that dramatic jump again. So if you come out of stress, you probably should gradually go down, or if you just drop down, you have to gradually build back up. Be careful of going, I just hurt my arm, I'm going to sit out for 4 days and then go play a doubleheader. Right? It's probably not a smart move.
Or if guys take a lot of time off and then they go play in a showcase. Right? Like I've had quite a few guys where it's like, I'm going to shut down for this showcase. You have to build up.
And that's why showcase ball, I don't think it was in there. Showcase ball does have a high probability of injury.
Well, I think because of the time of year, and then there's a lot of guys that have time off and then they just go compete.
Jump right into it. So that's, once again, you got to be aware. You're like, if you're up on the mound or you're in a game and you're like, man, I just threw twice as many throws or pitches as I did the last outing a couple days ago, I know this isn't good. You got to be aware of that. And that's when you probably should tell your coach, I'm a little over the limit at this point. Pathomechanics. So that was the overuse. So how are we going to deal with overuse? We're going to try to avoid a lot of that stuff, playing in concurrent leagues at the same time. A lot of showcase ball. What do you think are just some good things to stay away from overuse? To me, the 8 months, throwing more than 8 months out of the year is key. When your season's over, that's 2 seasons right there, and you got 4 months left of your year, going into a hardcore throwing approach right after that is not taking off. Doesn't mean don't throw. I believe you could do light throwing, low stress throwing, but I think that's a good way to stay out of the overuse, and also to the stress management thing. Be aware of how you're managing stress. But now we're looking at the mechanical issues. Anybody can think of, right off the top of the head, any mechanics, doesn't matter if you're a pitcher or you're a position player, that you feel are really important to you, keeping your arm healthy? Any specific mechanical movements? Raise your hand. I'm curious.
Throwing over the top.
So throwing over the top does what? Helps or hurts?
Helps.
Okay. I'm not going to judge you. I just want to hear.
Leading with your elbow, flying open, and how you load your scap when you throw.
Does that hurts or helps?
I mean, it depends. Like, if you're doing it well, then it's
Okay.
going to help.
So leading with your elbow hurts or helps?
Leading with your elbow hurts.
Okay. And what was the other one? Loading your scap?
Flying open.
Flying open, does that hurt or help?
Hurts.
Okay. Loading your scap?
Helps.
Okay.
If you
Anybody
do it
else?
right.
Okay. Anybody else? Does that mean you don't know anything about mechanics?
Yeah, throw something in there, guys.
Okay, come on.
Like pronating after the throw.
Helps or hurts? Okay. Come on. I'd like to hear everyone speak up.
Ronnie, I know you got an idea back there.
Yeah. If you.
Following through all the way down and not stopping
Hurts or helps? If you're Coach Zinger's dude right now and you're not speaking up, he's going to get mad.
Ty, go ahead, throw it in there, guy.
Not rapping.
Okay. Helps or hurts? Helps.
Okay, so let's look at some of these pathway mechanics. Stride length. So if stride length goes down, and this is going to be linking to Andrea and some performance in here, which is cool. So it says here, if stride length goes down, ball velocity goes down. And these are case studies with sample size that found the correlation on average, right? Front foot opened, shoulder and elbow forces went up.
So kind of like flying open, right?
So if your front foot open, your shoulder forces go up and elbow. Improper shoulder external rotation, shoulder and elbow forces, kinetics go up. That's forces also. Excessive shoulder external rotation,
Ball velocity goes down. So if it gets excessive, ball velocity goes down. Anybody ever heard that? Usually people would say like getting more external rotation, ball velocity goes up. But they're saying if it's excessive, it can go down. Let's see. When shoulder horizontal abduction goes down, ball velocity goes down. So that's when it's loading the scap. So when you don't load the scap as well, your ball velocity goes down. Early pelvis rotation, ball velocity goes down. Kind of like flying open, right? Let's see. Late pelvis rotation, shoulder and elbow kinetics go up. So forces go up if you're late to rotate your pelvis. Pelvis rotation velocity goes down, ball velocity goes down. Poor timing between pelvis rotation and upper trunk rotation, ball velocity goes down, and shoulder external or internal rotation torque goes up. You think a lot of that exists where a certain mechanical movement affects the performance on the ball and the stress on the arm? Pretty profound, right? So what does that mean? That means potentially we can make mechanical changes that increase velocity and reduce stress in your arm. Boy, isn't that like the $1 million program or the $1 million method? So that's something that I like to hear. When I see that, there was another.
Everybody know what the pelvis is? Everybody know what the pelvis is? It's okay if you don't. Anybody not know what it is? Would you say it if you didn't?
What's the pelvis?
What's the pelvis, Brent?
Right here. The hips, it's where the hip bones are, right? Like Elvis.
I see the biggest velocity killer, or what could hurt kids, is there's two phases of pitching: the stride phase, which is where we generate all of our power, and then the throwing phase. When you start to throw before your front foot lands, no bueno. You know what no bueno means? No good. So don't throw the ball until you anchor your front foot. That's a big one with you little guys, and even some of the older guys too. If you don't use your lower half, you go to the upper half to get your power. And you can hurt a lot of stuff. Hyperangulation.
So we're learning some mechanics here. Mechanics are important to reduce stress, important to increase performance. And sometimes we can get the best of both worlds, right? Which is what we want. What do you think creates your mechanics? So why does everybody have like pretty different mechanics? Like coaches? You think it's coaches? I mean, that's a good theory. Why do you think everybody has kind of different mechanics?
Different physical makeups.
Yeah, that's a big one. Anybody else? I think those are two really good ones.
Ideology. Of how
Yeah, kind of goes with the coaches thing. Those are both right. Y'all nailed it. So, and just because the coaches thing, that's a whole other clinic, right? With the body's really dictating where the movement happens, right? If your arm can if your arm can do this, and the other guy's arm can only do that, it's going to affect how he throws that ball. He's probably going to want to spin and extend, and this guy's going to lay back and go forward. So the body is really what's creating the movement, right? Duh. I mean, it's simple if you kind of think about it. So what if you change the body? Do you think it's going to change the movement? It should. Why wouldn't it if it didn't?
ideology stayed the same?
Or muscle memory. It's kind of the same thing. So it's like your body adapted or changed, but your muscle memory, your software didn't, right? You can really look at it that way. Everybody likes computers probably because we're around them so much. you can think of the muscle memory as the software, and you can think of the body, the anatomy, as the hardware. So sometimes you can change the hardware, but you're still running the same software. So sometimes it's a hard thing. Like you go in the weight room, you make some big changes that year, and you come out and you don't see anything. And it's frustrating. Well, sometimes you could have changed it on the positive on one side and then on the negative on the other side, and they kind of balance each other out. Or you could have made good improvements in the body, you're just not using it. It's like you got the bigger gun, you're just still shooting it like the little gun, right? You got to make that improvement. So just understanding that, it is important to note that studies found that weakness and inflexibility not only going to lead to poor performance or better performance, it's going to lead to injury. Those who typically came in with less flexibility into the season, less strength into the season, were typically more injured. Goes to that overuse problem of we need seasons, right? Why do we need seasons based off of that study? What are the seasons going to do? Or what is a season? Does anyone know what the seasons of all sports development is? What's the 3 seasons that we all go through? Off season,
Preseason, off season,
in season, or in competition. So like pretty much every sport has that understanding of development, right? Off season, preseason, in season. Baseball's kind of lost that. Why has baseball lost that understanding? What's the culture of baseball today?
play all the time.
Play all the time, right? So it's like in season, preseason. I always say we're more in season, preseason, in season, preseason, in season, preseason. And I mean, you see guys all the way to the top level kind of sometimes do that. You know, a lot of minor league guys, they are trying to make their money in the off season because in affiliated ball they didn't make that much money, so they're in Venezuela playing the whole off season. Now they got no off season because they're just in season. Those guys, you think those guys break down faster? They break down a lot faster. It's hard to watch. I know that they got to pay the bills, but it is hard to watch. So we need those off seasons. Why do we need an off season?
Like to recoup and strengthen yourself, recover.
Exactly. Because what does a season do to us? At the end of the day, everybody's here who's played enough baseball to know. What does a season do to us? Your what? Wears you down. It's wear and tear, right? And it really gets in this cool subject of the arm, you know. Where's a lot of the wear and tear, specifically for pitchers, you know, it's in the arm, right? And a lot of, you hear all that thing like arm strength, right? Arm strength, that's so important. Every season, you've got to need more arm strength. So what then should we be doing to get that arm strength in the off season that we're not already doing in the in season? Does anyone understand this? I think that's why we've gotten stuck in this play mentality, because everybody thinks, well, I'm just going to do the same thing in the off season I was doing in the in season, so why do I need an off season? So if we need more arm strength, what would it take to build that arm strength that we aren't already doing in the season? Anybody have an idea? We're already throwing in the season, so is that going to strengthen my arm? That's where we get stuck, right? Baseball has a hard time answering this question. Does throwing strengthen the arm?
Kind of. I mean, yeah.
Probably a good answer. That's probably a good answer. Anyone else want to answer? Does throwing strengthen the arm?
Yes, and it breaks it down too.
Right. Because if it did, why can't we just keep playing? Why do we have to get out of throwing?
Well, isn't it kind of like when you're working out, you tear the microfibers in your body? If you just keep tearing it, it's never going to have time to recover. That's why you have, like, when you work out, you have certain days, like arm day, leg day, chest day. If you just did, like, only legs, you never get better because they always just keep getting torn, never time to recover.
I think the simple way of putting it is, does strengthen your arm really strengthen your arm? You said kind of. It kind of does. It strengthens the internal rotators, but it typically weakens the external rotators. So you're building more of an imbalance, which is why it eventually gets injured if you just stay in that imbalance. So that's why we got to get out of the season and redevelop that integrity, redevelop that balance in the arm and in the body. A lot of times the hips lock up too, which adds more wear and tear to the arm. So you can see the season isn't really strengthening arms, is it? I don't even like the term arm strength, because is it really your arm? Is it really your arm throwing the ball? No. But that's what we hear a lot. We need arm strength, right? We got to throw more. We got to throw farther, throw harder. But is it really that? Obviously not, because if it was, we could just play every day. We keep getting stronger, right? Everybody throw 100. But it doesn't work that way. So we got to kind of change that mentality. Like I said, guys, go back to me. Tore my rotator cuff at 18. I'm out of the game. I don't know if I'm going to make it back. I followed the conventional wisdom. It led me to injury. I had to start looking at things differently. I had to look at things differently, and I still do it today. And I'm begging you to do it. You got to look at arm strength differently, because what you're being told isn't really how it works. Okay? And that's why once you accept that throwing isn't enough to strengthen my arm, then you're going to go, well, what do I have to do? And then once you learn what you have to do, you're going to find out that that's really hard to do in a season, and that's why I need an off season every year. Make sense? The kinetic chain goes right into arm strength. Is it really arm strength? Zinger, what do you say to people when they talk about it?
Absolutely not.
How would you put it?
I think it's the body, the arms along for the ride.
Exactly. So let's look at the kinetic chain. So anybody heard of this theory of movement, the kinetic chain? What does that mean? What's the kinetic chain? Coach Linsky brought it up. What's a good analogy of the kinetic chain? The whip. So how does the body represent the whip? Let's break it up.
Your arm would probably be the small string at the end.
Okay, keep going. I was waiting for it.
Sorry, we got it on video.
Okay. The end of the whip is the arm. That's pretty good. Let's go to the beginning. What do you think this represents?
The lower half, the legs.
I like to call this the hips right here, right? The hips, the center of mass, right? So now my arm's actually a part of the kinetic chain. What's my arm in my body? Moving the center of mass.
One of the levers.
The what? It's the leg. It's my legs, right? So if this is my hip, that's my leg moving my center of mass, right? Okay, so that's the way I like to look at it. My legs, my hips, and then what's this meat right here? What's that?
Core.
Yeah, the trunk, torso, core, okay, and then the hand, okay? So if I want to accelerate the end of the whip, what's the best strategy here to do this with the whip? Where do I want to start?
With your arm. Leg.
Okay, which would be the legs, right?
Yeah.
Let's start with the legs. Let's drive more force through the center of mass, right? More force through the center of mass, and then what's the rest going to do?
It's going to follow.
It's going to sequence in that same order, right? Hip, trunk, arm, okay? Do you think that'd be a good approach for teaching a throwing athlete?
Yeah.
You sure? You sure it wouldn't be smart just to go over here and just start moving this thing like this? Why wouldn't that be such a good idea?
Wear and tear on the arm.
Yeah, right, because I'm putting more stress down here. I'm not stressing this at all. And potentially, the lever here, the size, the power, more potential to get energy to the end, right? So you're right. We need to take that method with throwing. Raise your hand if you take that method with throwing. If you're with Zinger, I'm sure you do. Okay? So we're going to talk about that, getting into the kinetic chain. I love this science on it. Some people just need some math every now and then to understand how this works. Kibler and Chandler calculated that a 20% decrease in your kinetic energy, so that's energy going through the kinetic chain, like going through the whip, a 20% decrease in that energy coming through the hip and trunk to the arm, that requires a 34% increase of the rotational velocity of the shoulder just to put the same force on the hand. So if you shut the energy coming through this hip and through this trunk, you shut that down by 20%, you almost have to double it in your arm just to get the same force. Does that look good? No. Right? So if a coach is like, look, we need to control your stride, we got to shorten it up, we got to slow it down, we got to land soft, what did he just force you to do if you want to keep your speed?
Put more stress on your arm.
Force you to interrotate faster. So if I slow this down, I got to pick this up. But it's not 1-to-1, is it? It's almost 1-to-2. I almost have to double the energy. So what makes you concerned when you hear that? What's the first thing that pops in your head that concerns you? What are you concerned? Well, if you're a performance guy, you're like, well, crap, that's not going to help my performance. And then if you're already an injured guy, what are you thinking? I'm going to blow my arm out, right? It was pretty cool. I had David Ardsma. David Ardsma played 14 different major league teams. I think he got almost 8 years in the bigs. Awesome guy.
Some guys got to meet him.
Yeah, he's a legend. Great guy. If he was here, I'd just let him talk to you all the whole time. It's fun. So he tore both of his he tore his left hip labrum, tore his adductor twice. Comes to me, 3 hip surgeries and legs barely work. And he said, after this happened, within a month, he had Tommy John surgery. That was still before he came to me. And I said, well, what did you notice in that month after they released you from your hips and they were like, all right, let's get you back? What did you notice that was different? He goes, I would tell my coaches every day that my arm was moving faster than it's ever moved, and I'm throwing 10 miles an hour slower than I've ever thrown. Why? He couldn't understand it. And then boom, Tommy John surgery. What happened? 20% decrease, 34% increase, Tommy John. It's very common too. I just did a podcast with this Dr. Farmer and Chris Marlowe, PT doctor. Dr. Farmer is the doctor for University of Florida, and they've done a lot of research on that, and I've already seen them too. There's tons of studies that are showing like a one-to-one relationship of your hips to your arms, meaning like your hips break down, your arms already breaking down. A lot of times you'll find it. If you have a surgery, like a Tommy John surgery, or injury, or you have a shoulder injury, you can almost reverse back and realize and remember some type of hip pain, or constantly having like weak legs, or you just never felt like your legs were under you that year. So I'm telling you, it's kind of, to me, the underlying problem to a lot of the arm problems in this game. Also, too, a lot of the methods are doing what in this game? What are a lot of common conventional methods that we hear in this game? What are they promoting?
Arm strength.
Arm strength, fast arms, right? And that's dangerous. I'm not saying it doesn't work. Yeah, I can increase velocity that way, but you're in that equation. You're working against yourself, and you got to be careful. And proper sequencing leads to injury as well. So that's the challenge here when you start building energy from the ground up. It's like when I do that whip. Coach Lindsay gave us a great example. If you just crazy throwing energy through it, did it work? Did it accelerate the way you wanted it? What did he have to do to get it to create the pop? And what would you have to do to sit here and practice until you got it? What would you have to do to make it work?
You have to go through the kinetic chain.
Perfectly. You'd have to time it and sequence it perfectly and make sure that energy efficiently went all the way through it and wasn't just scattered all over the place. So that's sequencing. So when you learn sequencing, anybody know what sequencing in your throwing delivery or in your pitching delivery? Do you know what that would mean, sequencing? Anybody want to throw a shot at it?
Well, Zanger has this as 1, 2, 3, 4, or you're super fluid or anything along that.
Well, it gives you the timing to use your body in a better sequence. But what would be like a biomechanical sequence in the body?
Where does it start?
In your leg.
Yeah, feet, legs.
Yeah, which leg?
Your little, yeah, your drive.
The only one on the ground, right? The only one on the ground is a pitcher for 3/4 your delivery. Let's start there, right? Right, so let's start there. Then we move where? To the hips. Then we move where? Shoulders, trunk, arm. That's a sequence. Legs, hips, shoulders, or trunk, arm. Okay? So improper sequencing of that leads to injury. Those who don't sequence well. So what would be a poor sequence? Let's take a look. I got one here. Y'all probably can't see this that well. This would be a poor sequence. So we use 4D motion, which we just put Zinger through today. If we have time, I don't know if we have time to show it. I'll probably show it on my iPad. But this is pretty much it. We can get your biomechanics really quick with those sensors on you. And then it shows us this graph. And this is an angular sequence. I can also show a linear sequence. It's an angular sequence, which means what's angular? Anybody know what that is? It's a rotational sequence. Okay, so the red line is the hip. That's the hip peaking in time. Okay, and that white line straight down is where it is in the delivery, and you can see the avatar, he's in that position.
So this is actually the proper sequence. So I was going to say it's improper, but this is the proper sequence. So in the proper sequence, you can see that the hip, the red, goes first. Then what comes next? That green and blue are laid on top of each other, which is really important. That's the trunk and glove side. Those go next in the sequence. And then the yellow is the throwing forearm. That goes third. But you see that in procession. You see the hip, trunk, glove, arm. Okay? That's a proper sequence. So that pitcher is going to be more efficient in transferring energy. So if he was a whip, he'd be the one making the popping, breaking the sound barrier. And this guy would be the one putting the same energy through it, or maybe more, and not getting the sound, right? And look at the sequence. You see the blue is the gloves going first, then the trunk goes, and then the hip goes, and then the arm goes. Why would the glove go first on this guy? Why is that? Why is his glove wanting to go first?
Opening up.
He's using that to drive his energy, right? And where's this thing? It's at the end of the chain. So it's leaving all the lower, the initial movements or the beginning of the chain behind. So that's why I like to see that glove and trunk together, because I want what going first? What do we want going first in this sequence here? The hips, right? Hips, trunk, glove, and then arm. So this guy's going to be more prone to injury, okay? And it's hard, guys. I mean, just recently had a guy in season have Tommy John surgery. I mean, it's devastating. I don't like when my guys have this. But he's a guy going into season, he knew he had a really bad sequence. Guy threw about 96. Threw hard, but he had a really bad sequence, and he was going to be used a lot that year. So it's kind of like going into the year going, you're at risk, okay? Be careful. It's tough. But, and here's the thing, is it really easy just to fix your sequence? No. Why do most guys have a poor sequence or a bad sequence, or have a hard time to sequence their body correctly? What's usually affecting their ability to do it efficiently?
Flexibility, strength.
Both of those, flexibility and strength. If you're really limited in either one of those, more mobility, because mobility gives you more range to work with. Like, for example, if I took that whip and I made it really rigid and didn't have a lot to work with, it'd be harder to pop it and get the sound, get the energy through it. Okay, so that's the challenge. If you're like this guy we had, he was really tight-hipped, tight upper body, and he just didn't have it. I mean, we constantly worked on it, but sometimes you can only go so far and you do the best you can. It was cool. He came to me at about 82, so it was cool we could still get him to throw hard. It's just sometimes you have the challenge of, hey, when we start, you're a guy who can put a lot of force through your body. You're just a guy who has a hard time sequencing it to stay healthy. So then you get nervous, all right? And you got to be careful if you're that guy. Professional pitchers generate less arm torque. So this is cool. When you see the sequencing work and you're getting the Kibler and Chandler, the 20%, not decrease now, maybe it's a 20% increase, what do you think happens on the other end? So if I took the 20% decrease that created a 34% increase, what if I reverse it and I do a 20% decrease or increase coming up the body? What do you think now can happen to the arm?
Less stress.
It can actually lay back. It becomes more of a force regulator than a force generator. How dramatic is that to your baseball career? You probably doubled the lifespan of your career when you allowed your arm to reverse and become a force regulator and not a force generator.
Can I show them something since you brought up arm?
Yeah.
All right, everybody stand up.
I'm bad.
I'm now. All right, pretty simple. Arm circles, forward.
Watch out for the camera.
Just watch out for the camera.
Arm circles, forward. Everybody knows this. Spread it out, arm circles, forward. Big ones up top. Not like this, like this. Arm circles backwards. Piece of cake, since he's talking about arm path. This is one of those things that'll make you feel uncomfortable if you don't know it. Arms to your side. Everybody knows this one. Throw an arm forward. I'm a lefty. Pretty simple. Other arm the other way. I'm impressed. You're swimming. You're swimming. All right, that's it. I just thought I'd get you up and move around a little bit.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
It's actually good for your shoulder strength too. I mean, it's good for your arm health. So, really cool study here. They looked at the inter-rotation torques on all levels of the game of pitchers. All the way to the far right is youth, then high school, then college, then professional. Why do you think the professional pitchers put less stress or torque on their arm based on their body weight than even the youth pitchers? Why are professional pitchers putting less stress on their body? Why?
Stronger body and they're more proficient in their kinetic chain.
Yeah, better sequencing, right? So why do you think they are just happen to be at the professional level? Why aren't they scattered around? Why are all the better movers clumping up at the professional level?
Yeah, right.
You ever heard of Darwinism?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, the strong take over the weak.
Right, survival of the fittest. So you think that's a representation of it?
Absolutely.
So basically, they just got weeded out, right? It's the pyramid. The better movers kept going and kept playing farther and farther into the game. The better movers who were putting less stress on their arm. So it's like based off that study, you want to be like, hey, you want to play professional baseball, just learn to put less stress on your arm and throw harder than everybody else. Because we know, we looked at velocities, they would have the higher velocities.
So throw harder with less effort.
Right. So are we doing that, guys? Are we being taught to do what these professional guys are doing? Are we being taught to throw at a higher level with less effort? Are we being taught that? Yeah, with this beast over here. Right? Okay. But in the is that part of the conventional wisdom of the game? Do we hear that a lot?
No.
A lot of it is let's see what the arm can handle, right? You got to endure it, right? I understand you do have to endure some stress, and you do have to endure a level of stress, but does the guy who wins the prize, is the better guy the one who endures more? No. You're probably going to find, when you look at the league, the ones that are now getting all this money have found a way to endure less at a higher level. That was the trick. That was the secret. They figured out the secret. Everyone else is trying to endure more. They found a way to endure less. Right? It's that mind switch. Because, and I put this up here because sometimes people don't understand this. So what's the problem with arm torque? What's the problem if we get a lot of arm torque? What is torque? Does anybody know what torque is? Twisting stress. It's like twisting a towel. That's what happens to the tissue. It's being twisted. It creates that torque, that stress. That causes injury. Here's a study here that's found that those pitchers who had more torque and maximum external rotation had more injury. Okay. So is torque good? To a certain level it is. But if you're in a group and you have the most torque on your arm, is that good? You could be throwing harder than everyone else, but is that still good? And that's the problem. That's where we are right now in the game. Everybody wants to throw hard, and I'm not denying why we should or shouldn't. It's just people are doing that with no regard for the stress they're putting on their body. Is that smart? Because then you're 18 like me and doctors are telling you can never play a sport that you love and you thought you'd play most of your life again. Is that what you want to hear? I mean, it's reality. I've interviewed so many of them. It's crazy. They just reached 17-year-olds, call me up and be like, I've had 2 arm surgeries and I want to get on your podcast and tell my story. And I want to give them that platform. But it's constant. I hear it all the time. Raise your hand if you know someone under 18 that's had arm surgery. What do you know? What? Raise your hand if you want to talk about them. What's something that you felt that guy was doing had no regard for that you believe led to his injury?
So I have a friend, I don't know if anybody would know here, called Nate Montoya. He plays at
You don't have to call him out, but
Oh, okay.
I don't want to put him on the spot, but that's fine.
Oh, he's told his story before.
Okay, we're good. There you go.
But he played at Centennial, great pitcher, but his main problem was overuse. He was, from when he played Little League up, he was always the hardest thrower. I think he was a freshman, he was throwing 86, so he was and then he ended up having torn ACL twice, Tommy John twice, and then ended up having 3 shoulder surgeries.
Before he was 18?
Yeah, that's all happened right on his junior year. He's a senior now, and he has to quit baseball because he can't.
Yeah.
He caught and pitched. He played travel ball. He pitched every.
So he was that whole list of things.
Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. He travel ball. His dad was the coach for the club team. He pitched.
And his career's over at 18 years old.
Yeah, and he was going to be a ASU pitcher scholarship, but he couldn't because he can't get his arm over his shoulder.
Has anyone ever heard a similar story to that? Anybody else have a similar story? Someone they know, maybe? Right. That's I just heard a story. Interviewed a guy who had a story of that the other day. Pitching and catching, extreme throwing program in the off season, play all year round. The only time he took an off season was after his Tommy John at 17. That was his first off season, was Tommy John. The older guys, they get it, right? Like that. That's one thing. If we could go back to our younger selves, we would have managed our stress better, right? That kid is going to want to go back and manage his stress better, and manage his skill better, right? And that's just what we're preaching to you. Unfortunately, some guys your brain will not turn on until it happens to you. Meaning, like, we're telling you, we're warning you, we're showing you, but it's still going in and out. It's not hitting you, and then it happens, and then it just hits you like a ton of bricks. Sometimes we have to go through that, but being able to put this information out is the hopes that you guys will take advantage of it. Arm speed. So we looked at arm torque, led to injury. Pro pitchers put less arm torque on their body. So do you think that has anything to do with arm speed? Because sometimes arm strength, arm speed are interchangeable, right? And we need more arm strength. We need more arm speed. It kind of goes together, right? Do we really need more arm speed? Who would say, raise your hand if you think out of this, we're going to look at youth, high school, college, professional. We're going to look at arm speed. Who do you think has more arm speed? What level? Youth? Raise your hand if you think youth has more arm speed than all the levels. Okay. Raise your hand if you think high school has more arm speed than all the levels. Okay, raise your hand if you think college has more arm speed than all the levels. Okay, raise your hand if you think pro ball has more arm speed than all the levels. Okay, so I'm just going to give you the data here. Youth, 6,900 degrees per second. High school, 6,800 degrees per second. So it went down. But in ball speed's going up every single level. College, 7,400 degrees per second. Professional, 7,200 degrees per second. So who had the highest arm speed? College. Okay. Why does college have the highest arm speed? Why does youth have more arm speed on average than high school? What's going on? Why is it a poor correlation to velocity at this point? It's bouncing all over the place. Okay. You got insight?
I think it's probably because we get better using our bodies, and so for the difference between college and pro guys, the college guys, they just don't use their bodies as well as the pro guys.
I think it's a good point.
Still trying to get close to the same velocity in some of the cases, but
yeah, because you could probably look at all the other measurements, and the college guys and the pro guys are probably a similar size. I think size has a lot to do with this. Similar size, and the pro guys are probably using their size better, right? Youth to high school, you're seeing a bigger guy, right? Youth to high school, that's just a bigger guy. So that's probably why less arm speed, because they're throwing the same size ball. The little guy has to put more speed behind it to catch up to the big guy, even though the big guy is throwing harder, but not dramatically harder. So you're right, size is going to play in that. But then when the size equalizes, it's who's moving that size better. And I tell kids that a lot, and you'll see a lot in the developmental studies. You'll see the huge separators in development in this game all the way up to college are just size, strength, and speed. That's it. Mechanics have very little effect on it. Mechanics are important. You need to learn it because you're going to need that base one day. But you can't overemphasize mechanics either. If you're a youth player trying to, you want to play varsity baseball, and all you care about is mechanics, is that smart? No, because the biggest separator for you is bigger, stronger, faster. The high school guys are bigger, stronger, faster. I mean, even when you get to pro ball, I see a lot of low level, if you go into rookie ball, you get a lot of guys that are right out of high school, and you go to those big league guys, and there's a big size difference. So know where you want to be and know what's separating you. It's not going to always be mechanics. It's important. We do have to eventually become the better mover, but in the beginning, we just have to be able to compete at the same size, strength, and power of who we want to compete with, right? So, raise your hand, if the young guys here, if you are even thinking about your size and how that's going to affect your goals or dreams playing at a high level of this game. Are you guys thinking of that yet? Probably not. I wouldn't. That's not a problem. But that's something that you guys need to think about. I know you're young, but the next couple of years or two, you got to start putting that into play. Saying, just look at your parents, okay? If my dad's 5'10", my mom's 5'8", am I gonna be 6'9"? I don't care if you got an uncle 6'9", right? Might help. You always do that one, right? So what should you be doing at 14, 15, 13 maybe?
Training.
Yeah, you should be beginning. You don't have to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, but you need to begin base level training. Or even younger. Base level training. Olympic sports starts 4 or 5 years old. We're the late trainers, lifters around here. You can start young, but you don't get into the heavyweight. You learn your technique. You get good at proprioception, which is being able to coordinate. A lot of the stuff Coach Linsky was doing is really important for you guys. But you got to understand, you got to have the foresight to see, is my genetics going to allow me to compete at this level I want to be at eventually? And if not, you've got to prepare to overcome that. And that's where we can train. And that's where another reason we need an off-season. Arm strength in the kinetic chain. This one gets a little advanced. It's kind of a fun one to look at. So in this video, I can actually play it. Let's see. My mouse disappeared. There it is.
This is a great example to show you the difference between arm energy or instrumentation energy and kinetic energy coming up the body. Ideally, we want them to time and release together to optimize.
So this is a cool thing looking at, this is a guy who, this pitch was at 90, he's a lefty, and it was a good example of when you really start to learn sequencing and you start to learn to make the arm a regulator and not a generator, you learn that there's two energies in the body. There's energy kinetic energy you moved up the body. And there's this is more the arm strength. Then there's arm strength, or the arm generated energy. And ideally, when we sequence everything effectively, we want those meeting together. We want the kinetic energy being driven up from the ground to meet that arm energy. So this was a guy who actually had them separate from each other enough to where you could see the difference.
Ball
And it
speed while
affected him.
reducing forces. But in the case of this pitcher, he was throwing pretty hard. He was throwing 90. Because of his early trunk rotation, which you can see at front foot as he's tucking his glove side early, that causes the arm to drag and push. And when the arm pushes forward like it does here, it gets way in front of the face and forces internal rotation early, which more than likely would have had it overcompensated with the arm energy. And as you can see, now the kinetic energy that came up the body starts to throw the elbow up and forward towards the target in this line. If he was able to have both those energies, the kinetic energy and the arm energy, to meet at the same time, that would have optimized his ball speed and reduced his stress to the arm.
So
This is a great example.
when you look at that arm path, that was the path of the elbow. And every single thrower I'd ever put through there, thousands of them, the arm path the elbow path never stopped. It would continue to loop through. So see how it came at the end, came up and it stopped? It actually would just loop through. So his stopped, then shooted forward, and then finished the loop. It blew my mind until I figured out what happened. So like you see there, he forced the arm to accelerate the ball before the kinetic energy came up the chain. Okay? But it's really cool to see that because you actually see how energy works in your body, right? You can see that there's actually energy being pushed out of the ground, moving up your body, and and then releasing through your arm, just like the whip. And then there's energy when your arm lays back that you can pull forward to accelerate the ball. We want that harmony of them both meeting at release. And that's where the arm's a regulator. Because if there's a lot of kinetic energy coming up, then the arm doesn't have to get out there and create the energy. It just rides that kinetic energy. Okay? And that's how we win that battle of speed and stress. That allows us to get more speed without having to over-exaggerate the stress. So, I mean, I think if that's one thing that I can really implant in your head right now that regulate or funnel energy, your body has to sequence and generate it effectively for you to stay healthy and compete at a high level and compete for a long time. As far as like how we do that, and this is some things we're going to look at today, we do that by first evaluating your kinetic chain. Can your body move like this? We've got to measure it. And if there's restrictions, we've got to improve that. So that's where we get into strength and conditioning to improve that. And then we've got to then get into drills to teach you how to use it. So that's the method. Measure it, assess it, understand it, fix it, improve it, enhance it, and then put it together in the proper movement. We have a site, topvelocity.club. It's pretty cool to go to, where we actually put all these guys' metrics up so you can see how they're measuring all the way across the board. We have leaderboards based on velocity. You can see how the harder throwers typically have better performance movements. You can compare their mobility. I run little case studies off of them. I look at just simple analysis of how they're correlating, if it's a strong correlation, if it's a weak correlation. And the coolest thing, and I think the one thing that you have to also burn out of your brain, is R, what they call the correlation coefficient, meaning like it's basically defining the value of these two variables, meaning like, say, your arm speed and velocity. It gives a value of that, how well they're related. And that value is never equal to 1, meaning it doesn't exist, guys. Don't think you're going to find the exercise. Don't think you're going to find the mechanic. Don't think you're going to find the coach. Don't think you're going to find the mindset that equals the dream, right? It's never R equals 1. It's R equals some version or some percentage of that, and some things are less valued than other things, but it's a collection of things. You need to learn how to do everything really well. That's the moral of the story. You need to learn how to mobilize your body well, how to strengthen your body well, how to power your body well, how to control your body well, how to create a good mindset, how to eat well. I mean, you have to be able to do it all. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a simple way to do this. And that's the R equals 1 problem, is everyone's looking for the easy way out or the easy way to the prize. And that's the biggest mistake you could ever make, not just in baseball, but in your life, is believing that, because it's not true.
Totally agree.
As far as, I can talk a little bit, but I do use an Olympic-based approach with my strength and conditioning. There's reasons for that. I have a lot of the injury stuff on it. People are concerned about the injury. We do use a med ball, a 2-pound med ball approach, which is an overloading approach for the throwing, but it's a two-handed throw to teach the mechanics. And like I said, we do this with position players, pitchers, hitters, and we're on social media all the time because that's where I want to educate you guys. At the end of the day, that's really my mission. I know you guys need to understand this information. I'm not making this up. This is coming from a lot of research, hundreds and hundreds of case studies that I want to educate you because you deserve to know this, and you need to be educated this so you can stay healthy and compete and live the dream if that's why you're doing this. We can jump into some beginner stuff. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I think just the biggest thing is your overall athleticism, and I think you hit the nail on the head that there's not just one way to do it, or one magic bullet, or exercise, or food. It's everything. I'm going to do a little
Yeah, you want to do some of the King of the Hill stuff?
Little
I mean,
activity here. Let's go ahead. Let's hit a hydration station. If anybody needs to use the bathroom, we're going to set up a few stations, and we'll get some hands-on activity.
did you check my
Hey,
strategy?
you slow, man. Look at all that knowledge in
Let's
your
see what's
head.
coming up. You got your phone?
Your hats feel tight, you know what? Knowledge is power.
I'll keep filming it.
Look what went down to your legs. Your legs are full of knowledge now. Well, you're the one that almost made that half court shot. What you talking about, Willis? Wheels on the bus go round and round, round and round, round, round.
I just want to make sure it's going well. Hey, how's it going? Right.
I forgot.
Oh, that man thing.
What'd you forget, buddy? Shoes?
I forgot my shoes.
What size do you wear?
9.
9? Come with me.
Hey, hold on. Squeeze. That's a better handshake. I saw that handshake from over there. Can you go take this handshake? That was like Amazon. That's a camera.
Yeah. Doing the clinic right now.
I know I've got you.
Oh, another sport.
I have rubber.
Sure.
You have what, buddy?
I have rubber.
You can wear rubber, please. Yeah, go ahead.
Mental.
He just didn't remember shoes.
The dead ones are November.
Just a little bit. Are you guys going to leave your gloves back there? We're going to do a little active warm-up and then we'll get into the drills. Hey guys, let's just go 5 lines here. All right, let's just start off with a forward jog. Jog it down. All right, let's go back pedal. Back pedal. Guys, biggest thing with active warm-up is a lot of variety, right? There's a lot of different moves we can do here. We're just going to give you a little taste today, but I'm sure you guys are familiar. Hold on now. Face the flags. Let's go shuffles. Arms in a flex T. Go ahead. Same thing going back. Let's go quick skip. Quick skip. Yep. Get those knees up to hip height. Knees up to hip height. Drive the feet down. Drive those elbows back. Backwards on the way back. Backwards. Movers. Good movers, right?
Do you have like enough King of the Hills? I know they have it. It'd be cool to lay them all out. Yeah.
All right, let's go monster walks. Monster walks. Spread the fingers. Yeah, I'll just set it all up here in a minute. There's 2 of them right back there. There's like 3 of them back there. And I've got,
You gonna demonstrate? At least one.
I've got at least 4, so we can just follow this way. Backwards. Backwards arms too.
Just do the inner girls like this. I'll do the dry stuff. I might show them my stuff even that long.
Now, you guys, my guys, they've all done it. Let's go high skip. High skip, going for height. See if you can touch the top of the cage. Get up there. Reach up there. Reach up there. Get him, dude. Come on out. Same thing going back for distance. You guys moving a bit. Hold on. All right, let's go. Last one, we're going to go inchworms. Walk your hands out. Walk your feet up to your hands.
Please call inchworms.
No heart beating now. Let's go last one when you guys get back. We'll do silverback slam. Some of you guys that know them. Basically, you're going to slap the ground and you're going to do it right now. Slap the ground and do it right now. These call them silverback. Yeah, finish all the way through, boys. Finish all the way through. Sweat rolling. You got some sweat rolling now. Some sweating, Colin? Not yet. All right, silverback slams. Let them go. I can hear your hands hit the ground. Slap the ground. Be a beast. Be a beast. Animal. On out. All right, go ahead and hit a hydration station. We'll meet you right back in here. Hey, Brent, I got two right here. Two reasons. Good.
I mean, 4, 5, 2 more here. There's a gold string.
Yeah, I've got the original dinosaur.
Gold string for the
Me too, and I still use them. They're getting beat up though.
You're not going to run in behind them, are you?
What's that?
How they don't line up?
Just facing this way.
Face that way? Where they don't stay on the ground?
A promo for Rich.
Yeah, Rich. Rich should be watching.
Live action. Now, Nuke, I have them equally spaced. Can you?
Sorry.
I'm totally messing. Totally, you're good.
You got the laser?
Hey, I'm not going to use. Did you tell them to get their gloves? You didn't tell me. Hey, we're not going to use your gloves right now. Just a lot of us. So y'all can put your gloves out. We're going to do a lot of dry stuff. So.
Yeah, man, you wore the hell out of this.
Oh yeah, dude, we wear them. We crush them. Guys, you can kind of spread out, get over here where you can kind of hear. We'll do a little demo, and then you guys can play around a little bit.
You want it on this side? Or? Why y'all go on that side so I can show you?
Kind of make a big circle around it.
All right, so in the beginner drills I do with my method with the King of the Hills, what are the King of the Hills? They're force plates. They're going to give you feedback on what your back leg is doing. So, like I said, that leg is on the ground 3/4 of your delivery. So more than half of your delivery, you're sitting on and riding this back leg. That's where we're going to generate energy. We're also going to generate with the front leg. But this gives us feedback when we push against it. There's a little plunger. It'll create a bang, and we can crank resistance and make it harder. But it doesn't give us feedback when we push down. It gives us feedback when we push back. Why is that more important, that it gives us feedback when we push back as opposed to down?
Driving forward.
Right, because if we push back, action-reaction, right, it'll push us forward, okay? And ultimately, we want it to push forward through that hip, drive through that hip, okay? So that's why it pushes back. The other thing, too, some feedback on that giving us feedback is we can listen to when it goes off. So if I get it to pop too early, then that'll tell me, okay, I heard it went off too early. Where I want it to go off is right before I land. I want to go off as close to front foot strike as I can because that keeps more linear power through my backside. So it's giving an indication of when. It's giving an indication of force vector, meaning like where's that force going? It's going back, not down. And then we can crank it up. We can make it harder. So it's giving us an indication of how hard we generated force. That's really like 3 key things that the King of the Hill plates are doing that would really help you, right? And the crazy thing is, and what is a good training tool to me is a tool that becomes a coach. And this became a coach for me when I put it into my approach, and I just couldn't take it out because I didn't have to chase and run up to every guy and give them feedback. I could just put them there, and they could sit there, and that thing would coach them for a good amount of time. So a great tool is a tool that is like a coach. It's giving you that feedback and helping you understand what's going on. And there's no better one for the lower half. So when I start teaching my method, I want you to first understand how to use the kinetic chain. That's the goal here. If I can get you to use your legs and use your core, then we solve that. Less stress to the arm, right? More energy coming up, less to overcompensate with. How can I get you to use your lower half? It's not an easy thing to do. How many times have you heard a coach say you need to use your legs or lower half? Anyone heard that? Okay, a lot of people hear that. How do we do that? Not a lot of coaches can give you that. This is how we do it. So there's in every segment or every joint of your body, there's 2 types of energy we want. There's rotational energy. So like in my leg, this is rotational energy. And there's extension energy, or we can say linear energy, and that's extending. So I can extend my legs, and then I can rotate my legs, right? And when we throw, that can lead to force on the ball as well. The body also stays really healthy, loading and moving through rotation. But also in the case of moving energy in a direction, which is to the home plate, we have to be able to push force in that direction. And a lot of times rotation can take away from that. So I'm trying to optimize both. I want you to learn how to rotate, and I want you to learn how to extend. The problem is what do you think I find guys typically do, amateurs do better than say elite movers? And that is they rotate more. It's easier just to lift and spin everything open than it is to lift and load and drive and move towards your target. So because of that, I like to take rotation kind of out of the equation when we're learning things, because I like to create variations of the pitching delivery or the throwing delivery, and this is how I do it. So I want us to get in a full stride, okay? Because I want you to understand where we need to be to really maximize our leg power, and that's going to be landing in a full stride, and we're going to kind of work from that front foot position. And a full stride to me is like 90% of your height. That's a good full stride. You know you're in a good full stride when your ankle to knee, or what we call your force vector, is down. When that's down and linear, you're in a good stride. If I'm in a short stride and wants to be up, why is that a problem if my force vector, my ankle to knee, is up when I go to create movement? Why is that a problem? Anybody?
You don't get as much stride.
Yeah, I'm not going to want to because I'm just going to jump, right? So that's why a good full stride or getting out into a full stride is important, because it gets our vectors down. And now whatever energy we create starts moving us forward towards the target. So that's what we're going to start. We're going to do this simple drill with you guys. Full stride, okay, 80, 90% of your height. I want your feet straight, because this would mean rotation, which we're going to get to, but I want you to learn how to drive first and move forward. So we're going to open up. Like when we land, rotation's gone now, and now it's just about moving forward. So you're like sprinting here. You're loaded in your power pads, your ball of your foot here, and your weight's back there. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick the front foot up, stay loaded, and we're going to let our bodies fall back down, and right before we land, we're going to extend and pop that plate. This one, probably a little beat up. So we're going to lift, load, and pop into front foot strike. And this is where we get into what my method really stands for, triple extension, and that's the extension of the ankle, the knee, and the hip flexor, which is when the hips open. You get that final extension of the lower half. That's what we want to feel as we pop the plate. Lift, fall, triple extension into front foot strike. Okay? To prevent the sequencing going out of control, we have to keep the chin back. Because remember the sequencing. After I drive, it's got to go hip, trunk, arm. So I can't be driving and throwing my upper body. So I have to keep my chin behind my belt buckle to control and sequence my body correctly. So I'm going to lift, fall, and triple extend with my chin back. Where my hips are coming up to start the movement, but right now we're not going to worry about the upper body. But I want to keep this back so I'm not messing my sequencing up. So why don't y'all get on them? Why don't you get in groups? You want to break them up into groups here? Do we know the numbers?
Let's see here. Have you guys go here, there,
Zach, come on over.
All right, what do we got? 1, 2. The rest of you guys, let's go right there in the middle. Guys, just like, remember the toy boat earlier with Nuke? Anything that's new is going to be challenging at first, right? So zero judgment on yourself. Just go in there, give a good effort, do a few, and then rotate with the guy behind you.
Okay, so let's start full stride. Okay. I want you to lift and first fall. And the angle of falling is what we call forward and down at the same rate. You're going to lift, fall, but all my weight is on my back leg. It's like I'm sprinting. My chin's behind my belt buckle. I'm going to lift, fall, triple extend. Feel the hip push up, the plate pop, and the chin stay back. Let's try it. Good, good. And time it just before you land. And then here's the other key piece. You can't give out here. You want to stabilize that. Pop that plate.
Lift up, fall, and push with the back leg. The back leg has to be bent, so get your force vector from your knee to your ankle, and that's good 45. Bend it, there you go. Good. All right, try it. Try it out. Step out like this. Huh?
Keep your chins behind your belt buckle. Chins behind your belt buckle. Okay, you're not pushing. So keep your weight back, and right before you land, kick that ankle. Feel your ankle kick off the plate.
Bend that back leg.
So real quick, guys, a lot of guys in these, right? The first thing they want to do is reach with the front leg, right? If you notice when Brent was doing it, all he does is pick up the front leg, then drive the back leg through, okay? So the back leg puts the front leg on the ground. It's not the front leg reaching.
Good. Doesn't mean you have the ability to do that. You're just trying your best.
Use the right leg.
Yeah, make sure it's your drive leg. You don't have. Do you have gold in there or blues?
Some of them are gold.
Okay. I think that one's blue over there. Guys, you'll know you're reaching when your chin doesn't stay back. When you have to throw your chin forward, you're reaching. When your chin is back, you're riding that back leg, that back hip.
Push with your back leg, your hips on the in front of the chin. Get you back on the couch.
You're riding your back side. If you ever heard that term,
Chin back.
sit on your back side, ride it, and drive it.
Hey, you have to do.
Hey guys, just think about this. I'm adding more detail to it. Like a hitter, you wouldn't want to hit front leg and push over your front leg, right? You'd want to hit front leg and you want to stay behind your front leg. Same thing pitching or throwing. You want to hit your front leg and stay behind your front leg. A lot of you guys are hitting and going over your front leg. You're reaching. You got to drive and hit. Don't reach and hit your front foot. Ball and drive. Yeah. Better timing, but that was too slow. Got to get more power. Chin behind belt buckle. Feel your chin behind your belt buckle. Don't drive early. Fall and just before you land. You're rich. Better, but you're kicking a little bit.
Parents ever show you that movie? Once you search YouTube, warriors come out.
You're in front of that camera. So you want to drive just before you land, and you want your chin behind your belt buckle. Drive just before you land, and your chin behind your belt buckle. There you go, good. But see your front leg now? Your front leg is going out. Now you want to stick that front leg and stay behind it. So this would be here, but it allow it to really push out. If you go like this, you can't push out anymore. You're trying to stomp down as opposed to drive into your front leg.
Oh, don't stomp.
Well, you will. Just make it happen because you drove off that into your front foot. There you go, better. And don't just kick it and tuck it. Like keep pushing through it all the way up into your hip. Drive it all the way into your hip. Drive into your hip. There you go.
Sometimes you do like hands on the hips or hands
Yeah, you
on
can
the
do that.
chest just to
Go
create
ahead,
some
do that.
awareness. So if you guys are okay, you guys can practice this now, right? But the idea is just to get these reps tonight. The idea is to take this home and practice it. Okay, so there's a few ways that we like to do these same drills, but you're going to go hands on your chest is one, hands on your hip is another one, and then we'll actually go hands behind the back.
I even like Brad's one over the head
Over
too.
the head. Yeah,
Those are
I
pretty
like
cool.
over the head, too.
Yeah.
So there's just different variations of these. But these are something you guys can do every day, 5-10 minutes. Okay? You don't have to have the King of the Hill. The King of the Hill is very nice though as a coach. If you don't have one though, you can still do these. And I think something that I learned from Brent way back at the first camp a long time ago, but if the back foot drags, or if you can hear the back foot kick before the front foot hits the ground, did I drive?
And it doesn't have to be a long drag. You just want to hear that little kick over. That's
It's not
kind of the
just
same
a
thing.
reach, right?
Yeah.
It's not a reach, because then my torso goes with it. It's a drive.
Yeah. And it's not, don't fool yourself. A lot of times, that's the problem with giving cues sometimes. You find you cheat to get the cue, right? So this is not what we're talking about. Like going like that, right? So the purpose of the back leg, don't lose its purpose, is to drive energy up the kinetic chain through the hip. So don't stop pushing energy up through your hip. That's what you want. Okay? So try it. You want to try it with
Let's go. One
the
more
hands on
round.
your chest or hands on your hips? If y'all want to get really creative, hands overhead. That was a tough one. You can, if you want to get really creative, you can add in rotation. You can turn and do it in a turn where it gets really hard.
You can do it in the back.
Right.
You can do it with a 2-pound med ball. You can do it in basketball.
Right. So you're kind of like pulling it. Keep pushing through the hip, through your hip. There you go. Yeah, they don't get it. They want to push here. I love that.
I'll get on the ground sometimes.
Yeah, you push their hips.
Because if that back ankle kicks, it has to go through.
No, I think it's cool because like they do. They want to push through here. They want to go here. They want to go here. They're not going through here.
I'm guilty of the same thing still.
No, we're all.
I don't think I used to, but more.
No, you are. Yeah. Well, it's the legs. When the legs deteriorate, you got nothing else but to go.
I think it was a big thing for my car accident. That's why it's like now I'm back into
Squatting and
putting the shit right.
Yep.
I don't know if you want to touch on that at all.
Oh, man, you just.
No,
How long did we say we'd be here?
About another hour and 20 minutes.
Okay.
So 8.
I mean, we can go anywhere. I mean, I can go another level here. You see the other level?
Let's go to the next level. Do you want to do the back knee?
Yeah, that's it. Because I can go to front leg, but that's a good point from and I like to have the knees All right, let's make it harder, right? Hey guys, eyes fingers up here real quick. Let's make it harder, right? So I want you to go full stride, and I want you to stay in dorsiflexion. That's your toes curling back, and I want you to go on a knee. I want the knee behind heel because it creates a better foundation to create stability. Here's the key. In this low deficit, it's the hip extension is so important, and it's a big piece to being a good driver is hip extension. So sit here, you might want to squeeze your butt and open your hip extension. But the first move is going to be to lift your knee just a bit and then drive and pop the plate without coming up over your front leg, just to drive your hip through. So get your hip extension to open, lift, pop the plate, feel your hip drive up. Lift, drive, pop the plate, feel your hip push up. A lot harder.
Now, what do you say to a guy that's doing it when they go? Because they over-rotate instead of they don't drive. So it's just more extension, more push. I already know that delivery though, so.
Okay, chin behind belt buckle. Now, guys that have tight hip flexors, it's going to be hard. You're going to have to battle that tight hip flexion. You probably have a weak glutes. You probably have a tight quad. You have a weak core. A lot going on there. Guys, see this femur here? Right here? And it pushes into that socket. I want to feel that opening up or flexing back. Extending open. And don't use your arm. Look, your trunk is staying loaded back or extended. And you're lifting and driving.
Do one more time, you can do it without coming out. This is the one where I really like hands on hips too.
Yeah. Try your hands on your hips here. Really feel your hips push up.
Feel like you're gonna push those hips forward.
Hips up. Yeah. But just remember, you can't fly over your front leg. That was right, but you have to keep stability in your front leg. Your front leg, you really can't move. It's got to stay here. And it's just up like that. Boom. Yeah. See how that's moving? I'm there. All right. That one right. Yeah, but this is giving out.
Move in the half.
There you go, better.
Okay, one
Good.
more.
I'm trying to get that to pop.
The only thing I want you to do a little bit. So when you
Pop it. Pop that whip.
right now you're a little bit forward.
Oh, blowout.
It's new, right? Anything that's new is going to be a challenge.
How the Warriors doing? Warriors. There you go. Get that. Hand behind the belly button. You're only going to come up good. Notice how when you push, watch. Like this one. Push so hips.
He's already made it.
Right there, go ahead. Hold it, hold it. Just work on that chest and lean back.
You gotta get that auctioneer thing down.
I'm not having that.
Sold!
Hey, you that goes, guys.
You gotta get that hip through, you gotta pop that thing.
Try. Try.
All right, big check.
Try to go in the
Start
middle.
off. Eyes up.
Yeah, you're off on the side. Yeah, go in the middle and it'll be easier to push that.
So guys, just imagine we do these with med ball. So you'd be doing that, throwing a med ball. It's a lot harder. So if it's hard here, it's gonna be even harder with the ball.
Yeah.
Do your trunk forward. You gotta get your chin behind your belt buckle. And it's just pushing this hip through. Put your hands on your hip. Drive that hip through. Yeah. Try not to just stand up on your front leg.
Oh, there we go. That boy, that boy.
Was that his hip?
That was that hip hop, man.
Okay, keep your front foot down. On the knee ones, I want the front foot down. Makes it more challenging to push the hip.
Nice. Pop, I'll pop it.
All right, guys, if you want to go to another level of difficulty, you could do it in the full stride one. You can do it in the full stride one. So let's go into shoulder or hip to shoulder separation. So if my hips are open, I'm gonna put my shoulders closed. You can put them here. You can pinch your blades, but the key is to pinch this, get this shoulder behind this hip, and this elbow behind the shoulder. So we're sequencing the chain, right? The hip is up, the shoulder's back, the elbow's behind that, and then when we turn, the arm will actually go behind the elbow. So that's like the whip, pulling it all back. I want to get in this position, hold this posture, lift, fall, and drive, and create that separation between the two. And you can even, if you want, pinch into it.
Now, what's his upper body guys doing? Anything? How's his posture? Same too, right? See, he maintains that good posture.
Try that.
I'm bad.
Even harder. Chin behind belt buckle. Hip to shoulder separate. Feel the hip go forward, the shoulder and elbow pinch back. Good. Focus on your back foot. Driving that up. Look, you're not loaded in the hip. You go here. Put it on this hip. Feel all that pressure in the hip.
Boogity, boogity, boogity.
Put it here. Shift it here. Bend that knee. There you go. Put it back here. There you go. On that. Listen, drive. Okay, don't thrust. Drive and separate. Pinch that blade. Pull that shoulder behind your hip. Elbow behind your shoulder. And drive and separate. And you want to feel, when you drive, you want to feel it pushing all the way up through your hip. All the way up through your hip.
And then that's true. You already separated there. Pushing it that much more. Is this live? Is this live? Yeah, I'm gonna take walking over there. Looking at the shot on YouTube.
There you go.
Yeah, stand in front of the camera. It's delayed about 3 or 4 seconds. It is.
That's why he's saying it. You did some push-ups though?
So with these, your upper body's going to really relax your upper body.
You're all bowing up.
Right, the only thing I'm really working here is this. He's hanging out.
And the Warriors are busting all you guys out, man.
Oh, man.
And look, you can grab a dowel and you can turn and hold a stick. You can hold the stick and pinch your blade.
Come on, let me hear it.
Oh, I thought he was gonna pop. Stay low, stay behind that front leg, and drive.
Hey! Ah, there we go, that boy.
No. I'm taking him on the road.
Hey, that boy. Good night.
Put it
all on that back leg. Yep. Don't throw.
Yeah.
Drive and separate.
This way. Right here. There you go. Right here. Bring it to daddy. Bring it to daddy. Hum that.
Okay, a lot of you guys are doing this. Look, a lot of y'all are putting your load here. I can see this quad on fire. I want this hip socket on fire. Look at the difference. My glute turned on. All this is on. You guys are all in this. That's not it. All the power has to be here. Remember, this is the handle of the whip.
Oh yeah.
When you put it here, you're starting at the end of the whip. And you're doing this. Right? You got to get it into the handle right here. Squeeze your butt. Turn that musculature on. The Velo Pros, I don't know if you've seen the Velo Pros. It's a little harness. It has a bungee. That's what it helps do. It helps turn this on and keep you loaded in your hip and driving through your hip. There you go. If we had some Brad Rayo in here, it'd be perfect, man.
That's all we need.
It would be perfect.
Nuke and Rayo and
UFOs take over the world. UFOs would land and be like, what are y'all doing?
they'd be hanging out. Like,
They'd be like, what are y'all doing?
we might take one of them.
Y'all are so
Aaron's already gone there, so. He's already been there for sure.
See how, look, when you're landing, everything's like, keep it loaded, like pulling back a slingshot.
Now, come on, let's get it done.
Pulling it back. We're not letting it go. Pull it back and hold that.
Come on, Leslie. He was doing it. That's what I'm talking about. He was doing it. That's what I'm talking about.
Jeez,
Oh, I lost
you
my
just killed a chicken.
I need a new cracker, man. I'm all done.
Oh man, Dana's gonna be
Look,
gone.
he's dead. Listen.
Oh!
I'm saying
Shoulder.
guys, close your shoulders, drive your legs, right? Close your shoulders, drive your legs.
There we go.
I'm learning.
Hey, so you transfer. I want you to pull it back.
Pull it back.
We're trying to do it. Turn your shoulders all the way. See what the
Oh, you did it, bro.
Bend that knee. Sit back here. There you go.
Nice.
Hold it back.
One more.
Put it up. Hold it back. Transfer. I want you to stay back when you drive. That's good. You're in the right place. You just don't have the power. More power.
That's because my power clean is absolute penis. My form for my power clean is
See, when you get to a good level with that, this will get better. All right, you blow your mind. Well, actually, just face the other way. Just face the other way. That's a front leg. So, from how much time you think it takes, the moment your hip goes forward, how much time do you think it takes in the average pitcher to hit front foot strike? How much time do you think that takes?
probably like 1 point.
It's less than 1 second, so it's 0.6, 0.7 seconds, somewhere around there. So, when the front foot lands, the moment it lands, your arm's cocked, to pitch release, how long does it take?
0.3 seconds or something.
1.2 seconds.
What does it look like? How should they look like when they land? What
You're
should
still
they
in
look
that
like?
position where your hips are through, and you're separated, your arm's just coming up.
How about your front side?
You're in line here, just lined up.
Yep.
And focus with your target.
Okay? So 0.1, 0.2 seconds. How long does it take to blink the eye? 0.4. The slowest is like 0.4, but it's like 0.3. So from front foot strike to pitch release is within the speed of the blink of the eye. So, like, can you see why? How many in lessons have you been in where the coach is trying to make dramatic changes after front foot strike, where your arm goes, and you're struggling to make those changes? I mean, how many times have we been there, right? Get on top of the ball. Get out front, you know? It's because you're in such a quick interval of time that you're probably not going to make that change, right? And I look at it this way. It's such a quick movement because the previous movement, the bulk of the movement, 3/4 of the delivery, is what created that quick reaction when the arm got active. So, because it's the kinetic chain, right? A lot of that energy came up the chain. So a lot of those corrections at the end really came from you improving through the stride, or what we call the stride phase. Okay? So we're going to work into the throwing phase. Okay? So still understand the kinetic chain. If you sit here and you just think of your arm, it won't work the way this drill is intended. You got to understand, even at this point, it's still using the whole body, using the kinetic chain. So here we are, front foot strike, put the middle or the power pads right on the front of the rubber, and we're going to pop it twice. I like to tuck my glove and get my chest open, my arm is laying back. I want to shift my weight and feel that weight shift. That means landing in the front foot. Everything's behind my front leg. Now, once I land and stabilize, I'm going to extend and drive the leg to abduct the hip, trigger the upper body, and then sequence to the arm. And this is how you create a more linear release. Guys, a lot of you guys are going to get here and want to just spin and throw your arm out in front of your face. It's because you're obviously a very rotational pitcher. So I want you to try to see what this is like. Use the kinetic chain, even after front foot strike in that short interval, by shifting your weight, stabilizing, and then driving to extend and abduct your hip and feel your trunk go before your arm. And ideally, I want to hear the second pop before I feel like I would release the pitch. Like this. Boom. Feeling my trunk launch like it's being thrown forward.
It's like a catapult.
But notice, I'm still driving the whole time. I'm pushing up, pushing my hips up. And I'm loading my trunk as I stabilize. Boom.
Look how he straightens out that leg, guys. That's a high velocity advancement.
A lot of correlation to your front leg extension
High
to your
velocity
pitches.
advancement.
So try that. That's
Something along those same lines too, like if the pitching delivery is a second, and 0.6 seconds to 0.7 seconds is the stride phase, and it's cause and effect, what should be your focus?
Those 0.6 seconds.
And the cause, right? And if we can get better at the cause, what else is going to get better? The effect, right? Or that if we get better at that 0.6 seconds, this is going to get better as well. So
yeah, it's the same thing we were talking about. Where do I really want to make the changes? If I don't like the speed of the whip, and I don't like where the whip went, where do I make the correction? Do I go to the end and correct? Or I start over from the beginning and create a better movement?
yeah, that one.
Yeah. So let's try this. These are going to be hard. These are going to be even harder.
You want to spin them around? I guess we can just face that way. Go ahead.
Yeah.
We'll just face that way now. Bring your lines over here.
You got to try that.
Guys, get behind the leg. If you get over the leg, it's like hitting. You're not going to be able to transfer. Get behind the leg.
Like this, and then
Watch those conversations.
Picking up all your conversations.
and then extend it. Load it to explode it. Then to extend it.
So what's the sequence? Because this is tough. You're going to shift, stabilize, and load. Then you're going to extend to push up and launch the truck forward, and then that commits your arm.
Make sure your ankle is in front of your knee when you're doing it. You can't do it with your ankle over your knee. Your ankle has to be in front of your knee.
And get behind the leg, behind it. Don't get over the leg.
Don't get here. That's no bueno.
Yeah, and try to get more trunk out of it. Yeah, try to get more trunk out of it. Getting a long stride, get behind. Getting a longer stride, Goldschmidt. Mr. Goldschmidt, get a longer stride. Get low.
It's not here.
Get a little longer. Okay, get low. All right, stay there and drive into that. Push into that trunk, yeah. But load this back and unload it. There you go. That's a good point. Yeah, make sure, righties have their left foot, lefties have their, righties have their left foot, lefties have their right foot.
So are we starting now with our chest?
Loaded. So your chest is extended and you're here and you're shifting into that and then you drive and then it launches everything. It's like a car crash. You hit, boom, everything explodes forward. You're putting this here to pull. Just get this out of the way. You're already open.
Okay.
And just focus on driving back and launching forward.
So I'm throwing it right now, right? And I'm throwing it right now.
You got it all going together. So it's like a wave. It's a wave. Boom. Boom, right? You got it all going together. You went all together when it needs to go. Extend, then launch, and everything goes.